What's up, guys? Hello, so Football Talk here. Switching back over to the AFC side of things once again for a divisional draft breakdown series where we talk about all 32 NFL teams and what they did during the draft. We'll break down every single pick based on my personal evaluations and why each team made that pick, which I can agree with or not if they should have done. Then we look at each class as a whole and what the plan behind it was, as well as how well they were able to execute it. And then at the end of the video, we'll compare those four hauls against each other and the process that came along with it. As always, only trades that happened throughout the draft weekend will be taken into account, although for an understanding of why team's capital was set up the way it was beforehand, I'll quickly mention some of the other moves on the side as well. If you really want to dive into the skill sets of your team's newest members, are looking for a comprehensive overview of the entire draft and a bunch of other detailed breakdowns, I suggest you head over to my page, hellofootballtalk.com, and check out my social media channels. Links for both are in the video description, and timestamps for each individual team and the divisional draft rankings are down below as well. Today we'll be talking about the Texans, Colts, Jaguars, and Titans, and we will start with the Houston Texans here. They earned the number 3 overall selection themselves and picked up 13th overall, which they ultimately traded a couple of spots back from, plus the second selection of day 3 and future draft capital from Cleveland in the Deshaun Watson blockbuster deal. And with the number 3 overall pick, they selected Derek Stingley, the cornerback out of LSU, then 15th overall later in the first, Kenyon Green, interior O-line out of Texas A&M, second round, 37th overall, Jalen Petrie, safety out of Baylor, and 7 picks later, 44th overall, John Mechie III, wide receiver out of Alabama, then in the third round, 75th overall, Christian Harris, going back to Alabama for the linebacker, then in the fourth, 107th overall, Dameon Pierce, running back Florida, 2 picks in the fifth, Thomas Booker, interior D-line out of Stanford, and Tegan Kitoriano, the tight end out of Oregon State, and then found in the 6th, 205th overall, Austin Deculus, offensive tackle out of LSU. So at the top here of Stingley, which actually got some steam late, after Stingley wasn't heavily discussed throughout the draft process, until reminding people of his talent at the LSU Pro Day. This guy came out as a true freshman at only 18 years old, and was the best corner in the country in 2019, when he intercepted 6 passes and deflected another 15. He has the feet of a boxer and the loose lower body to incorporate any type of jams without allowing receivers to get to the edges of his frame. Over and over again, his tape is filled with negated reps where he's in perfect position for out and there's just no angle to complete the pass towards, while having tremendous ball tracking skills and hands to come down with poorly thrown ones himself, to where people realized later on that they actually should just avoid him altogether. Unfortunately, he did miss time early in 2020 and almost all of last season when he was dealing with a Lisfranc injury. He actually got schooled by Alabama's Devonta Smith in the 2 matchups. That was the guy that really gave him trouble. And overall, more of those really savvy route runners who can kind of throw him off of the line. That's something that he's going to have to work on, being a little more patient in that regard against those guys who can kind of hide what they're doing with the hips. He does lack a willingness really in run support, I'd say, and missed 17.6% of his tackling attempts in his career. So it's somewhat surprising for me to get him here for Lovie Smith and his fondness of the cover 2 scheme, but from what he said to Stingley on the phone after that was released later on, we'll see him stay 1-1 on the boundary probably, and them just structuring the coverages away from him, which kind of changes that unit fundamentally, I would say, to where everybody's job becomes easier, and it's just going to look different altogether. Then later in the first with Kenyon Green, I thought they'd actually use pick 13 potentially on Notre Dame safety Kyle Hamilton, who went a pick later to Baltimore if they had gone with offensive line first. But with them having invested into the secondary already at this point, they felt comfortable moving back a couple of spots with Philly in exchange for a 4th and 2 5th rounders, so that is definitely a nice haul. And with Green, they get somebody who comes off the ball with good bend in his knees and accelerates his feet through contact to really uproot defenders out of the gaps. I started actually watching the running backs, and when I was watching Isaiah Spiller, all of his big runs seemingly went right behind Green, whether he was cutting back or being able to press to the front side and just forcing the defense to flow really and cutting behind his block. Somebody who can really move mountains in a run game. He's a patient pass protector with smooth lateral movement skills as well, along with that, which led to only 10 total pressures and 1 sack across nearly 750 pass blocking snaps these last 2 years, where he was playing between left tackle and guard. Overall, I would say fitting his hand consistently is something that Steve still has to work on in the run game, just being able to really latch them and maximize the power that he has in his lower body. And he heavily relies on a 200 punch and pass pro at this point, getting his feet stuck in sand at times, before at the combine having really a subpar testing event where you expected better in terms of the other guys at the position. Just him not really standing out, being behind the top group at guard and center, I would say. But the Texans were dead last in the NFL last season in total rushing yards and average yards per attempt. So I think this guy will be an immediate boost to that and give them a blue chip player up front, along with Laramie Tunsil, where now all of a sudden that offensive line could become a strength for them when it has been kind of a weakness for a long time outside of Tunsil, who they brought in a couple of years ago and had to give up major draft capital for. Then in the second round with Jalen Petrie, a guy that spent 2/3 of his snaps in the slot at that star position, how Dave Carana calls it there at Baylor, had 50 total defensive stops last season, which was most among all defensive backs, which if you look at PFF metrics, that is something categorized as a positive play for the defense basically in terms of the yardage being needed towards a first down and where stop actually occurred. And then also 25 pressures as a blitzer, which was the second most among DBs. Has that ability to even stick on the outside at times with the quick feet anticipatory skills to match patterns, which you also saw at the Senior Bowl, him lining up a cornerback quite a bit for those one-on-ones. And the coverage numbers really tell you the story. 0 touchdowns allowed, 2 interceptions. Somebody really an all-around player who can kind of do everything. Won't blow you away physically, I would say. Ranks in the bottom 24th percentile across the board for all the size dimensions at least, including only 30.5-inch arms. And he did have 15 missed tackles last season, kind of just being out of control too much and leaving his feet. The Texans still have Desmond King at nickel on a 1+1 deal basically. So it'll be interesting to see if they maybe play Petrie as more of a traditional safety or replace the role of Justin Reed, who can play high and low. Just give them the flexibility as well on defense to do a lot of different things and be versatile with the coverage approaches. And then later in the second with John Mechie, and they actually show conviction here with the Alabama wide receiver, as they moved the early third rounder and 2/4 for him, dealing with Cleveland here once again. Very patient route runner who can lull defenders to sleep almost, and then is sudden to great separation, can step on the toes of defensive backs and force them to commit the hips, which is why he was only contested on 8 of 50 targets last season versus man coverage. Last season, operating more so out of the slot, just that ability to set up defenders and win on a variety of routes. Puts in good work and much better physicality as a run blocker than he'd anticipated that size, but he is only 5'11 with 30.5-inch arms, so his hatch radius is severely limited, and you saw him take his eyes off the ball a little too early a few times last season, which led to 8 drops. And then also, of course, tore his ACL in the SEC Championship game, so you have to question, is he going to be fully ready week 1? I'd say just a very crafty receiver who's ready to produce as soon as he's totally healthy, along now with one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league in Brandon Cooks, and the big body of Nico Collins, looking to make a jump in year 2. So him being somebody who's a plug-and-play guy in the slot, outside if you put him off the ball, I really like what he brings to the table there. And going back to the Alabama well with Christian Harris, 6'2", 230 pounds with 4.44 speed and an absurd 11-inch broad jump, which rank in the 97th and 99th percentile respectively for the linebacker spot. Such an explosive and physical athlete who can crash through blockers, but also has the ability to run with tight ends down the seams and give guards a little shake as a blitzer to win on passing downs if you send him as a pressure player. Can kind of float around a little too much with his run fits and needs to learn how to really read his keys more cleanly. Also, not really great awareness for route patterns necessarily, and absolutely has to become a better wrap-up tackler, missing 15.7% of his attempts last season. This is easily the most talented linebacker on the Texans team right away, and he should start with Mike Lovie as a run and chase specialist, but definitely needs to clean up his tackling and become a more aware player, I would say, which Lovie could be a good teacher for that with all linebackers that he's coached in the past. Then on day 3 with Damian Pierce, heavily underutilized at the University of Florida, especially as a senior when he touched the ball just 119 times, but he turned those into 790 yards and 16 touchdowns. Dude runs the ball with an apparent violence and has great contact balance, that ability to pull himself out of wraps and stay on his feet through contact. Also has that suddenness and ability to squeeze through narrow creases as a runner, and a phenomenal one-legged plant to, when the defense is coming down and he's one-on-one with a safety or something, stick his foot in the ground and get out wide, or when he's kind of leading the linebacker to the wrong side of a block and cutting underneath it, stuff like that. Has a strong base to stonewall linebackers blitzing right at him, and he was the best guy at the Senior Bowl all around, looking like a true 3-down back, I would say. I would, however, mention as well, he can bleed out runs a little more, I believe, where he slightly overruns his blockers and should keep himself ready to cut it up after pressing a crease. Never touched the ball more than 123 times in the season and had limited passing down work, while he did drop a couple of passes on wheel routes during Senior Bowl practice, that ability to track the ball down the field and keep his hands together as the ball arrives there, that's something that you might have to work on, but just not a ton of reps in that regard. Pierce was my number 5 running back, and I think he can be a complete 3-down option for a team that was rotating guys through like crazy last season. He's better than anybody that they have there right now, and I'd love to see him get featured. Then with Thomas Booker, once again moving up 16 spots in exchange for a 6th rounder here. 6'3.5", 310 pounds, with a girthy lower half and the upper body strength to bench press offensive linemen in the run game. Tested in the 77th percentile or better across the board at the combine, and he surprises some blockers with his sudden movements as a rusher, along with a knack for batting down passes. He does try to cheat some block and kind of peek around them, and he doesn't do anything that blows you away as a pass rusher, which led to just 21 pressures on 370 pass rushing snaps last season, while only having 1 sack in each of the past 2 seasons, so the production certainly leaves something to be desired. Very much a New England type of guy that Nick Caserio probably appreciates, as this tweener body with great strength and alignment versatility, added to an interesting group of defensive linemen, which might be the best unit on that entire team. Having invested some pretty high picks into that position, and now you get somebody down the line here who I think would have certainly gone earlier. Then the tight end Kitoriano, somebody who works with good pad level and leg drive as a run blocker, shows urgency getting out in space and does a nice job of finding soft spots versus zone while having those strong hands, not dropping any passes last season. He does overshoot his targets in the run game at times and completely misses as guys are able to swat away his hands. And his production is certainly underwhelming, with just 40 catches in 42 career games, while also having drawn 5 penalties last year. With Brevin Jordan being better suited off the ball as an H-back or wing, and Pharaoh Brown more of a receiving option as well, this is probably your inland number 3 option, although not very exciting. And then finally with Deckless, starting and ending with LSU guys here. Rarely loses his balance as a run blocker and is looking to get a center pointed at defenders to work through them, excels with alternate hand usage as a pass protector, and patiently sorts through games up front, and just super experienced, having seen action in the school record 61 games. He did however test in the 26th percentile or worse across the board at the combine, doesn't create a ton of displacement in the run game, and is vulnerable to some quick inside counters by lifting the post leg. He is battle tested in the SEC with 0 sacks and 17 total pressures on nearly 500 pass blocking snaps last season, so I think he'll be a solid backup at right tackle, and maybe slide inside to guard at some time. This was a very un-Texans-like draft from the perspective of really making great use of the assets for the first time in a while. They really hit good value throughout the entire draft. They get my number 1 corner, who hasn't played at an elite level since 2019, but has the potential to be a true shutdown guy, my number 2 guard, and a top 5 running back to get that run game back on track, which a year ago ranked dead last in the NFL, and now take some pressure off their second-year quarterback Davis Mills, a couple of stalwarts on defense on day 2, who have been productive physical players for big programs and can set the tone for that unit. Booker I expected to go a lot earlier than the 5th, and he'll be a worker bee up front for them, and then a couple of depth pieces late. So they really surprised me here in a positive direction, and I believe they are starting to build the roster the right way in the vision of that front office, so I was pretty impressed. And that leads us to the Indianapolis Colts, who came in with a couple of extra third-round picks due to the Carson Wentz trade with Washington, although they didn't have a first-rounder from when they originally acquired him from Philadelphia. Let me quickly run you through the picks here. 2nd round, 53rd overall, Alec Pierce, wide receiver, Cincinnati. Then 3 third-round picks, 73rd overall, Jelani Woods, tight end, Virginia. 77th overall, Bernard Ryman, the offensive tackle out of Central Michigan. And the 96th overall, Nick Cross, safety, Maryland. Then in the 5th round, the 159th overall, Eric Johnson, interior D-line, Missouri State. 2 6th rounders, Andrew Ogletree, tight end, Youngstown State. And Curtis Brooks, interior D-line out of Cincinnati. And then finally in the 7th round, 239th overall, Rodney Thomas, cornerback, Yale. And they would have originally picked 42nd overall, but moved back 11 spots with the Vikings in exchange for swapping 3rd and 4th rounders, along with picking up a 6 here, and then finally selecting Alec Pierce, who is just a freakish athlete at 6'3", 210 pounds, who at the combine ran a 4.33 in the 40 and had a 40.5-inch vert, along with those top 5 wide receiver numbers for the agility drills, has the power to fight through contact, and you can see him run by corners for Alabama even, while his size makes him somebody who can win in 50-50 ball situations down the field. However, he's not the type of receiver who will create a ton of separation against man coverage, as he was contested on 48% of those kind of targets last season. His footwork can get a bit choppy, and he has to do a better job of keeping room towards the sideline on those outside releases. You keep that speed element along with Michael Pittman, who who actually brings better size and blocking ability than T.Y. Hilton as the Z receiver for them. And he apparently has already been tearing up in rookie minicamps, so I could see him being a very productive player pretty early here in Indianapolis. And let's just stick with the theme of freaky pass catchers, because Woods is a 6'7", 260-pound tight end with 4.61 speed, massive hands to win in traffic, and the ability to just bounce off tackles after the grab, while really only scratching the surface of his talent as a heavily underutilized pass catcher, being more of a blocking, tight end, and H-back option at Oklahoma State, which he originally committed to as a quarterback, so he's also making that transition. And then he finally spent the season at Virginia, where he saw some of that talent show up. But he is largely a projection as a receiver, with pretty rounded breaks at this point and a bunch of double catches on tape. And despite having plenty of experience as an inline blocker at OK State, there's a bit of a lack of awareness where he doesn't look fully convinced about his assignments, especially when the picture changes post-snap. The guy that I compared Woods to in the pre-draft process was Gigantor himself in Mo Cox. Now you have two guys like that streaking down the field on either side of the line, where if you now run forwards and maybe with an option on the outside to break back depending on the coverage, that can be pretty deadly for them. Then Ryman is next, who actually started his football journey at 14 years old in Austria with the local Vienna Vikings and was recruited as a tight end by Central Michigan before transitioning to left tackle out of necessity actually, and becoming a first team All-MAC selection in 2021. It's just his second season there. His hand placement and understanding for body positioning in the run game I would say are already outstanding. And then he's the athletic traits to excel on the move, especially in the screen game, get him out to safeties even, execute reach block on the front side, stuff like that. Very impressive physical specimen, and has the lower body to mirror in pass pro, only surrendered 1 sack and 14 additional pressures on nearly 700 combined pass blocking snaps across his 2 years on the O-line, so he was already uber consistent I would say. His hands do get outside his frame pass pro too often, and he kinda elongates his windup, also while only having 33-inch arms. Not sure how much weight you can add to that frame since he's already packed on like 50 pounds and he'll already turn 25 by the end of the upcoming season. So that might be why people let him fall to the spot. But I think the Colts got an absolute steal here, and this guy will be a started left tackle for them for a long time. I actually had him slightly ahead of Northern Iowa's Trevor Penning, who went 19th overall. So you see the value here, absolutely tremendous. He went safety here with Cross, and you must have really liked him because they give him a 5th and a 3rd rounder next year to acquire this pick. Cross has a nice bounce to his step as he works down against the run from depth. His missed tackle numbers aren't great, but he was put in a lot of tough situations as the last line of defense and having to make those crucial tackles. He has that true deep middle range to make plays outside the numbers, with good instincts and ball skills back there. His eye discipline can be hurtful at times, where he's kind of locked in on one read, and his aggressiveness can kind of bite him in the butt at times, rather than allowing his processing skills to take him towards the football. So that's going to be something that he just has to work on. But he will only turn 21 as the season starts and simply needs more reps there. It'll be interesting to see how they actually deploy him there with the addition of Rodney McLeod, along with Julian Blackman as this all-rounder, and Kyrie Willis being more of a box safety or robber type. So they didn't really need him there right away, but a super talented player who could pay off down the line in a major way. Then in the 5th with Eric Johnson, actually one of my gems of this draft. Awesome pre-draft process, showing his incredible combination of strength and quickness to create issues, first at the NFLPA and then at Senior Bowl practices. He's a guy 6'4", 300 pounds with the base end build, but I think he can line up all over the line, has that wrestling background to fight for his space, and great potential as a rusher I would say. His superior power and athleticism allow him to be a great player at the FCS level, despite actually lacking advanced football IQ at this point however. His aiming points can be pretty off, and he kind of tries to just look around blockers at times too much. But he adds much needed depth to the interior D-line there after having lost some bodies, and will probably play a pretty good amount of snaps right away, particularly on early downs to control a lot of scrimmage, so I'll love this pick. Then Andrew Ogletree, unfortunately I didn't get to watch or even get some tape on the Youngstown State offense. Less than 400 yards receiving over the last 2 years and 8 drops, but a high-level athlete and has the willingness as a blocker from my understanding, as a special teamer, but currently the tight end 4 I would say. Then with Curtis Brooks, a first-team All-AAC selection last year with 12.5 tackles for loss and 7.5 sacks. Landed at the nose quite a bit, but more so in a slanting role, and one with the lateral quicks as a plus athlete there, who can wreak havoc in the run and pass game once he figures out how to really defeat the hands of blockers. Don't think he's a very consistent run stopper at this point, who's had issues with his pad level and anchoring down against double teams, and he'll need to work on incorporating rush counters as this win or try to mirror the quarterback kind of guy at this point. But to get him this late as someone with a different skill set than Eric Johnson on the interior D-line works. And then finally Rodney Thomas, another guy, simply didn't get my hands on the Yale tape, and I'd already watched like 40 corners. Well, pretty impressive athletic profile at 6'2" and the speed to make it as a special teams asset. Obviously don't love that they didn't have a first rounder because of a player that they couldn't wait to get rid of in Wentz, but I think they really hit it out of the park with those 3 third rounders, which if you add in Pierce, they could easily have 4 new starters a year from now at key positions, and then addressed areas where they needed to be deeper. With the addition of Matt Ryan, they remain in the win now category, and while a couple of guys aren't there yet, I don't see any major projects and guys that will make them move on from established veterans anytime soon. Pierce's skill set matches up great with Ryan. Ryman, to me, as a mid-third rounder is a big key here, because he could have easily been the pick there if they had the original first rounder still, and they get him at a major discount here, most likely as an immediate start at the blind side. So Chris Ballard staying true to his character and making his money in the middle rounds, which could really pay off for them down the line, I believe. Which brings us to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who kicked off the draft with the number 1 overall pick, which they didn't know exactly where they would go pretty much up to the draft day, but they only picked at the top of 2 more rounds due to a couple of trade-ups, and only made 7 selections overall rather than the 11 that they originally were slated for. So obviously, first of all, Trayvon Walker, the edge defender out of Georgia, and then they trade back up into the first, 27th overall, Devin Lloyd, linebacker, Utah, then 2 third-rounders, 65th overall, Luke Fortner, interior offensive line, Kentucky, and 70th overall, Chad Muma, linebacker, Wyoming. Then in the 5th round, 154th overall, Snoop Connor, running back, Ole Miss. 6th round, 197th overall, Gregory Jr., cornerback, Wachita Baptist. And then in the 7th round, 272nd overall, Monteric Brown, cornerback, Arkansas. First of all, with Walker, obviously an alien in terms of the athletic profile, running a 4.51 in the 40 at 272 pounds, along with elite testing all around, and just stupid with the way that he moves at that size, where you look at him at the combine, running the figure 8 drill and stuff like that. Just incredible the way that he can bend his body and be loose overall in his hips and lower half. And you see it come to practice as well, legitimately in game situations where he can line up at the nose and loop all the way to the outside. He's played up and down the line for Georgia and has the ability to just jolt blockers backwards in the run game while having elite potential overall. However, he simply doesn't have much of a plan as a pass rusher at this point and just kind of bangs into bodies a lot of times. There's certainly a bull in the china shop quality to him, and he'll have to refine his technique overall. And I hear a lot of the not being allowed to attack stuff, where I understand that a lot of twisting going on there and kind of flushing everything to the linebackers, where he didn't have a ton of those true one-on-one reps just getting up the field. But has he really shown you that he can be that guy who can dominate one-on-one matchups as a pass rusher? I understand the argument, but nobody ever talks about the other side of the coin, I believe. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I didn't love the pick. He was my number 4 edge defender, and I would have not considered him before like pick 8. He can of course live up to it, but right now it's rather bad on other guys. With get to Lloyd, who he moved back up into the late first for in exchange for the first and final picks of day 2 and a 6th rounder. He was the number 1 linebacker on a lot of boards, coming off an incredible season for the Utes with 111 total tackles, 22 of those for loss, so he shows that knack for making plays in the backfield, along with 7 sacks of course, 4 interceptions and 6 more pass breakups. A guy who's very light on his feet and has a loose lower body to float around, but also explosive hitting power and can rush from some different alignments and angles, where you saw him line up on the edge quite a bit and legitimately give tackles problems with his burst up the field, but also off the ball, blitz from different angles, working across the formation, stuff like that. Doesn't have the sturdiness to actually stack and shed blockers, I would say, where they can work up to him and just get in his face, and he gets his shoulders turned too quickly on lateral run schemes. Plus, because of his long legs, the change of direction is somewhat limited, and on play action you see him getting sucked in too deeply a lot of times. The Jags brought in Foyesy Oluokun as a free agent, and now you add in Lloyd to the mix to have those 2 versatile players who could be heavily deployed as pressure players and passing downs. So that's kind of interesting exactly how to utilize those guys. Next up we got Fortner, who was one of my favorite center prospects in this entire draft. There's no pause whatsoever between the snap and Fortner's first step. Has a great feel for zone blocking, when to attach, deliver bumps and seal off linebackers, with good grip strength to control guys. Also as a pass protector, where he shows easy movement skills and great awareness for twists and stuff like that. So really an all-around player who I was blown away by the tape, to be honest. tends to overextend his arms in pass pro and not really the type of guy who will drive big nose tackles off the spot in more of a power-based scheme. But with the retirement of Brandon Linder, they desperately needed to find a solution at center, and I believe Fortner could be that guy for the next decade for them, so I really like this pick. And then Chad Muma, they grab another linebacker, and I believe they actually get the better value here with my number 3 at the position, who I had an early second round grade on. A guy that put up crazy numbers as a senior with 142 total tackles, 8 for loss, 3 interceptions, and 2 of those returned to the house. An instinctive playmaker who trusts what his eyes tell him and can play fast because of it. Pursues the ball with great effort, has the quick twitch to mirror backs one-on-one, and really excels at tracking down scrambling quarterbacks. So really all around, another guy who I actually loved on tape. Wasn't asked to process information between the guards a whole lot, has to do a better job of using his hands as a blitzer, and probably better in zone than man coverage, where he can kind of get too far onto his heels at times. Not totally sure what the fit or path to playing time here is for Muma, so I would have preferred to see him get a chance somewhere right away, but I really like the player and won't be surprised if he eats into the snaps of some veteran and kind of carves out a role for himself not too late from now. Then with Snoop Conner, who they actually gave up 2 6th-rounders for. He has some of the filthiest trucks on tape for all the running backs in this draft, consistently runs with his pads over his knees, and when there's a lane, he hits it at full speed, with that final gear to take it the distance. The testing may not say it, but when you just check the tape, the way that he can run away from people at the end of those runs, and even if somebody in his way just trucked him, nearly unstoppable at the goal line, and just somebody you don't want to get in the way of. There is some refinement needed to set up his runs, only executing zone and power schemes that I'll miss, and not totally doing it at an advanced stage. And he only had 14 catches last season, while playing a very limited third down role, or just as a receiver altogether, because they had another guy there who was most of that guy who would excel in space and stuff like that. So probably an insurance policy for James Robinson, who's recovering from a torn Achilles right now that he suffered later on this season. And he gives them a physical element, along with last year's first rounder Travis Etienne, who never saw the field as a rookie because of the ACL tear that he suffered in training camp. So I see what they were thinking here. And then 2 more corners with Gregory Jr. and Tarek Brown. First of all, Jr., I certainly think worth the investment here. It's really tough to take anything off his tape, considering the 2 losses his team had last season came to Harding and Southeastern Oklahoma State, who had the 49ers logo in blue basically. But Jr. did show out at NFLP practices and then was called up to the Senior Bowl, where he didn't look out of place necessarily. He's very patient and physical to not lose off the line and kind of push receivers off track with pretty smooth transitions. His issue is at the catch point, not really showing the willingness or ability to turn and locate the football, oftentimes getting flagged late for jersey tucks and stuff like that, but not a bad way to spend a pick just ahead of the 200s. And then with Brown, I was told to watch by a lot of people. It was a bit underwhelmed by. Basically has prototype measurements for a boundary corner, patient feet off the line, and can dislodge the ball from receivers while being a reliable tackler, only missing 10% of his attempts in 2021. He tends to arrive a little bit early and or panic at the end if he has his back turned to the football, and he did run a 4.55 at the combine, just has very little room for any false snaps and needs to approach blockers more proactively, I would say. So you can probably make the roster as a number 6 cornerback or something if they carry that many, but to me he's a backup in the NFL. So as a whole, I don't quite get what they were doing. Obviously, at number 1, more so disagreement in the evaluation, where I still want to see a lot more from Walker, and I thought Jacksonville needed a surefire thing with where they are as a franchise right now. They picked 2 off-ball linebackers who I like, but within 40 picks after paying another one big bucks already this offseason, and they actually traded up for the first one of those. Fortner I like a lot and will be quality long-term starter at the pivot, I believe. They trade up for corner, another running back who I actually liked better than a bunch of the other people out there, but once again costing yourself an extra pick for a running back in a deep class there, where quality options went undrafted actually. And then they grabbed a couple more corners late, which I didn't mind as much. So not a bad class by any means, and if Walker lives up to his potential, he could turn out to be the best player in this draft. I'm not going to doubt that, but he has a long way to go. And I just value things differently in terms of the individual evaluations, positional value, and then operating the draft board, let's say. So I thought they could have done more here. And that brings us to a final team for today, the Tennessee Titans. And their draft obviously started with moving one of their best players rather than making a selection when they traded A.J. Brown to Philadelphia in exchange for picks 18 and 101. And they moved out of the original first round pick, 26th overall, with the Jets, which moved him up 32 spots in the third round and gained him another 5. The picks here: first round, 18th overall, Treylon Burks, wide receiver, Arkansas. Second round, 35th overall, Roger McCreary, cornerback at Auburn. 2 third rounders, 69th overall, Nicholas Petit-Frere, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State. And then later, 86th overall, Malik Willis, quarterback, Liberty. 2 fourth rounders, 131st overall, Hassan Haskins, running back, Michigan. And Chigoziem Okonkwo, the tight end out of Maryland. 5th round, 163rd overall, Kyle Phillips, wide receiver, UCLA. And then 2 more 6th rounders, Theo Jackson, the cornerback/safety out of Tennessee, and Chance Campbell, the linebacker at Ole Miss. First up with the pick that he got back from A.J. Brown and Burks, who I, among other people, finally compared to A.J. himself to some degree, as this 6'2", 225-pound beast who can hit another gear and bounce off tackles with the ball in his hands, is explosive when he can just take off and can get behind the defense, even running past Alabama's group, and makes some big catches down the field with those large mitts to win through contact and deliver those plays where the quarterback kind of just throws it up for grabs, does round off his break, can kind of glide into routes down the field too much. So a pretty raw receiver at this point in terms of the route running, a lot of deployment in the slot, and only faced press coverage on 39 snaps last year, while his combine performance didn't live up to the crazy expectations. But I think in terms of wanting to recreate that skill set that he had with Brown at a much lower price point, which I don't love, but can somewhat understand at least, this was the guy to target. Even though he's not going to be as reliable nearly at pushing off to create separation on deep curls and comebacks to save you on some crucial third downs, which last season in particular, AJ just making a bunch of those happen. Next up with McCreary, 6 overall cornerback, one of the stickiest cover guys that I've seen in the SEC recently, getting his hands on receivers right away and not giving them any breathing room. Last season surrendered a completion percentage of just 45.3% for just 5.9 yards per target. And he's the one looking to engage with blockers, actively trying to push them off after approaching those guys in man coverage assignments. However, he only has 20 arms and 4.5 flat speed, so the length and speed components that you want to see out of your corners not really there, while lacking those high-end athletic traits to bail him out when he isn't in perfect position. And he pretty much has no experience in zone coverage, which he actually once mentioned himself, so I like the self-awareness there. But one of the most battle-tested pressman corners in this class, yet with the lack of length, some teams I thought may look at him as a slot option only, because there's such a little tape of him anticipating patterns in off zone. So at this point, just not having shown the all-around skill set, they did draft the uber-talented Caleb Fowler in the first round last year, who was falling due to injury concerns with his back, and Christian Fulton had an excellent second year, I would say, with Elijah Molden also in year 2 at his best in the slot. Maybe McCreary starts as a backup, but he's a rock-solid player who can stick with all types of shifty receivers. Next up with Petit, number 8 offensive tackle, 6'6", 315 pounds, has gotten a lot quicker off the ball, being able to instantly get underneath the armpit of defenders to create movement or execute scoop blocks away from the action. Shows good rhythm in his kick slides as a pass protector, very light feet, and the loose hips to flip and run with speed rushers and kind of ride them past the quarterback. His pad level does rise a lot, too often still overstrides initially in the run game and can be backdoored because of it. The pressure numbers increased mightily last season at left tackle, where his footwork needs some cleaning up to reduce those balance issues if he wants to stay on that side. But I personally liked last year's second round of Dylan Radunes, and I think he'll start at right tackle initially. But Petit-Frere has great potential to eventually take over on either side, even though it benefit from settling in somewhere. And I could see them put Radunes inside and start Petit-Frere at right tackle ultimately. And then we get to the big Willis. Did give up a 5th rounder to move up 4 spots for him. And I had him as my number 1 quarterback and actually going 8th overall to the Steelers in a trade-up scenario, thinking back to my mock draft. So I was way off here, obviously, and so are many other people. Willis, a former Auburn transfer after the Tigers decided to go with Bo Nix instead. 23 combined games with the Flames, over 5,100 passing yards and another 1,800 on the ground, with 74 total touchdowns versus 18 interceptions. Can throw some absolute bullets, especially those cover 2 honey hole shots, where his receivers have really slowed down, probably don't even expect the ball anymore, and all of a sudden it's put there right on the chest. Ran a very simplistic offense with little help at Liberty, where a lot of times he had to create things. And this past season, he broke more tackles at 89 than any other FBS player on the ground, including running backs. He did, however, run, like I said, very elementary passing concepts, where he wasn't asked to read between the hashes and very few anticipatory throws on his tape. Led the nation with 10 fumbles last season, just holding onto the ball longer than any other quarterback in the nation, and has developed some of those hero ball tendencies to kind of give his team a spark and kind of push them over the top. But as he transitions to the next level, those things are only going to get worse, and just something that he has to work on, being able to understand when the play is over and play within himself and stuff like that. Obviously, he's not going to push off Tannehill right away, but to me, Willis was the best talent in this class, and with a year to learn and the potential out in Tannehill's contract in 2023, I could see the switch happen then. While it's high praise, of course, and he has a long way to get there, I really like the comparison to Steve McNair in terms of the skill set, who is a guy who's a Tennessee legend. And then with Haskins in the fourth, 220-pound back, was more so of a committee guy until his past season, when he racked up nearly 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, really taking over down the stretch for Michigan. Shows good peripheral vision in the run game, being able to find those creases and dart through them, utilizes his off-arm really well, and then in pass pro, he can really strike rushes, deliver some devastating chips where he gets a hit on the defensive end, actually knocks him to the floor because getting out in his routes, and then he doesn't dance around as a receiver once the ball is in his hands. He's not a very creative runner, and you see him get run down from scraping backs of linebackers too often, to where he just doesn't have that juice to really threaten the defense, a lot of times going 20 yards when others will go to the house. So that lack of speed and just creativity in the open field are the two things that he kind of lacks there. But I think he's going to be an excellent backup to Derrick Henry, now with Deontay Foreman in Carolina, who had 3 100 yards games in the absence of Henry, as this tough in-between-the-tackle runner and rock-solid pass protector for Haskins, as they might want to take some tear off the King following his foot injury and just projecting him forward. Later in the fourth with Okonkwo, even double his receptions, yards and touchdowns through his 3 years with the Terrapins, with 450 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. Got onto the national radar, I would say, with a combine best 4.52 in the 40 among tight ends. And that's kind of when people started to notice him, really dive into his tape. Ran a bunch of slide routes where they would throw the ball out in the flats and he would just rumble downhill. That ability to create force and break through tackles, while also being a versatile and mobile blocker, whether you put him at H-back or even fullback at times, making those tough on-the-move blocks and creating a crease for one of his backs. Does feature a pretty narrow build, not the ideal one for an inline option. He's not great at route pacing and setting up breaks as a receiver yet, and had a very simplistic role in college, where it was a lot of those slide routes, like I said, just that ability to get him out in space, catch the ball, and just get upfield, make something happen. And he just has to learn also to find open space in zone coverage. But I think is exactly what they had in Jonnu Smith there as this H-back yak specialist who could be a productive player in that type of role again pretty much early on, just because he doesn't have to learn a whole lot of the playbook necessarily in terms of intricate route running or anything like that. Then with Kyle Phillips, while people may want to pigeonhole him as this undersized slot receiver, he did line up out wide at UCLA and has real juice off the line. Shows a great understanding for setting up defenders as a route runner, can vary his body language and work in head fakes, which you saw him just dust corners at the East-West Shrine practices, that ability to set them up, force them to commit the wrong way and then cross the face. And he can also adjust how he catches the football, whether he can just rip it out of the air and run with it after the catch, or if he's in traffic and kind of has to body catch it to protect the football more so. You like how he can vary at the top of his routes, but at times it's just way over the top at this point, I'd say, which won't work for a lot of timing-based offenses where you need to get the ball on that first step. Phillips ran just below 4.6 and has very little production in contested situations with just 30-inch arms, so it's not going to be somebody who's going to win down the field a whole lot, whether it's with his speed or that ability to win through contact. He's going to be a tremendous slot receiver who will run more of the intricate routes until Robert Woods is totally healthy, and he can probably line up at Z to some degree as well, I believe. And then 2 more here with Theo Jackson, recorded career highs across the board last season, playing the star spot for the Vols defense, as this nickel defender who knows how to use those 32.5-inch arms to punch and shed blockers. One of the most physical tackles that you will find at that spot. Is patient off the line and reads body language well, while also being a ferocious blitzer, especially off the backside, chasing things down from there. He didn't become a full-time starter for the Vols until his redshirt senior campaign, and he'll already turn 24 less than a month into the upcoming NFL season, while having down a ton of shallow zone coverage, and kind of just lacking that makeup burst if he takes a wrong step, if he is put in man coverage. So I think he's going to compete for snaps in the slot probably, backing up Elijah Molden, and probably can fill in for Amani Hooker as well when needed, as more of the box safety, somebody who's going to play closer to the line of scrimmage. maybe just some limitations of what you can do with him, but does bring an intriguing skill set as this long slot defender who is going to be a contributor in the run game. And then finally with Chance Campbell, an uber athletic linebacker with all the athletic testing numbers in the 80th percentile or better, and also featuring good size, quickly IDs plays and is an active communicator, while being pretty light on his feet in zone coverage and showing impressive closing bursts as a blitzer. However, he did have 21 missed tackles last season on 127 attempts, kind of just runs himself out of run fits at times and has a tough time getting off blocks, as well as little plan as a rusher when he is used on third downs as a pressure player. He's going to be a special team asset due to his athletic profile and adds some depth to that group, but they're kind of set at the linebacker spot, I would say, with what they've shown this offseason, letting a couple of guys go and feeling confident in doing so. I hate that they felt the need to part ways with AJ Brown. The contract he got with the Eagles is fair in my opinion, but they felt like they couldn't allocate those kinds of financial resources to just one player, and that they could replace him with a cheaper model, so to speak, but not sure what it says to the rest of the roster for a guy that's done everything right, and they'll have some big decisions to make here fairly soon. But what I really like about this class is that I can see a clear vision for basically all the players that they selected. Burks, his comparison being AJ Brown on the high end, and having some incredible potential, even though in the dropback game his route running is a work in progress still. McCreary may not start week 1, but they dealt with some injuries at the cornerback spot, and he's a sticky cover man who can play right away. Petit Frere was one of my favorite offensive tackle prospects and makes some of the decisions down the road easier because he can play those both sides. Willis was my number 1 quarterback, and to get him there in the third could turn out to be an absolute steal who doesn't have to play right away there. Haskins pretty much an ideal backup for Derrick Henry. Okonkwo gives them what they lost a couple of years ago in Jonnu Smith. Phillip adds something to the receiving room as this crafty route runner that they don't really have until Bobby Woods is back. Jackson adds some depth to the slot and strong safety, and then Campbell as an athletic special teams asset. Outside of Willis and maybe Phillips, they didn't get a ton of great plus value, but I get all the picks that they made once the big trade was done. And that leads us to a divisional draft rankings, where at the top, I went with the Houston Texans here. One of the best drafts in franchise history, I would argue. And heck, they needed it. I'm not going to make a ton of noise this season, most likely. But they're not going to make things easy for other teams either. With a quarterback and a head coach trying to prove themselves as the long-term options there. They just got lots of players from big programs. Guys that will kind of transform what they are trying to do there on both sides of the football. With Derek Stingley at cornerback. Kind of what you can do, sliding the coverage away from him. Along with Jalen Petrie in that secondary, just a ton of versatility that they have there. And then the run game, just how bad they were last season, to get probably the most rugged guard in the run game and maybe the most physical back in this class. I love that combination to bring along with it. Thomas Booker in the 5th, that's going to be a steal, and then John Mechie and Christian Harris, those 2 Bama guys, also could be prominent players for them fairly soon here. So really thought they had an excellent weekend overall. Then the Indianapolis Colts, who didn't have a first rounder, but nailed the middle of this draft with 3 tremendous third round picks here, reloading at positions that had some question marks with very talented players. And really when you look at it, not having a first rounder, but probably getting 4 new starters in 2023, that's pretty impressive. And as we look at the things that they've done this offseason, making an upgraded quarterback, the draft guys that they put together, and some of the free agency additions, right now to me they're certainly the favorites above the Titans, and there could be quite a margin between the two, I believe, which I understand. Tennessee was the number 1 overall seed in the AFC last season, but I could see some decline here. And that brings us to the Titans. Not a ton of great value picks other than my number 1 quarterback getting deferred, which I actually believe is going to be with a very good guy ahead of him who can kind of teach him the traits of the position in Ryan Tannehill, which that whole mentor story that's got out, just mainstream media cutting out a 3-second clip and sharing it online because they have no other content during the offseason. Really kind of disgusting how this whole thing works, but I actually think he's in a very good spot for him, and that'll allow him to grow as a player as he gets ready and kind of molds that incredible talent that he has. And overall for Tennessee here, kind of just a good combination of players that'll help them right away and upside prospects, where you get Burks, who definitely needs some work in his route running, but could be that AJ Brown clone for you in a couple of years. Very balanced in terms of offense and defense, and just reloading to a roster that has a lot of players that are going to get paid very soon here. And then finally with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had the number 1 pick, and I just thought they made the wrong decision there because they needed a surefire thing for where they are as a team right now. trading up for low value positions like running back and linebacker, picking those 2 off-ball backers, and those 2 picks in the 3rd round with Luke Fortner and Chad Muma. I love those 2 players. And Fortner is going to be a great star at center for them. But then for Muma, I don't see a clear plan. Maybe if they want to use first the Luakun more so on the ball. But he also just drafted Trayvon Walker, and you still have Josh Allen there, the edge defender, not the quarterback, of course. So I just have some questions with how they approached this thing and thought there was meat left on the bone, considering the draft capital that they had. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and feel free to share with some people who you believe would be interested in these kind of detailed breakdowns, especially as we're in the dark period of the off-season here. This wraps up a 3rd week of the series, which means we'll finish up with the NFC and the AFC West next week. As always, you can find the link to my page helloswithfootballtalk.com in the video description if you're interested in all my in-depth positional draft breakdowns and stuff like that, as well as my social media outlets, which are on the screen right now as well. Why don't you just click the video at the top right corner for another one of these? Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one. So until then, see you later. Peace!